All right, welcome back to the Pursuit of Property podcast. I'm here today with Cade, my co-host. Cade, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing good. It feels, usually I'm on this side when we've got a couple guests, but today, no guests. It's just the two of us, and it's the first time I've been over on this side, so it feels a little bit weird.
It does feel a little weird for the two of us to sit next to each other, but I think it's for the right reasons. Today, we're kind of venturing outside of our normal podcast setup.
Yeah.
Because there's been this music video that went absolutely viral. When we checked this morning, it's at 18 million views in 9 days.
Crazy.
It's got way more views than that throughout social media. I would guess it ventures near 100 million.
Hundreds of million. That would be my guess across TikTok, everything. It's pretty bonkers.
Yeah. And not to jump on a horse or a bandwagon that's already been rode way too hard.
Yeah.
But when we sat down on Tuesday to do our normal one-on-one meeting, our level 10 meeting that we preach about, you know, I kind of threw out, I was like, dude, I heard this song over the weekend, and you immediately knew what song it was. And we talked about, you know what, let's do a listen through on the podcast, because it connects well with a lot of the topics we've just been talking about over the last few weeks. And I think this is going to be a uniquely different podcast than anything we've done before. It's more of a music review video, which we want to just share our thoughts on the song.
Yeah.
And obviously promote Oliver Anthony, the artist, and, you know, get his name out there.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, the biggest episode I think of in recent memory is back in the Silent Killer episode, when we were talking about, you know, just the struggles everybody, not only in our industry, but the majority of people in this country with inflation, with trying to figure out how to, you know, keep making ends meet when your standard 9-to-5 6-figure job, $100,000, just isn't going to cut it anymore. And I think that and all of those topics, I think that's why this resonates so well with not only us, but what I think we can talk about and maybe provide some insight and just get some feedback and help some people out.
I also have to say, before we listen, you know that I'm not a country fan.
No.
So I was surprised I liked this song so much. So we're going to listen through it.
Yeah.
And, you know, kind of add some feedback to what we're thinking.
Let's do it.
I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, so I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new.
Before he gets to the chorus, I know I said before the pod, I hate when the video guys
pause play.
When I heard this, at first, it was kind of weird because it reminded me, and I've told you about this, when I was working at Ruth's Chris, how I would wake up in the morning, work at real estate, then go to Ruth's Chris, and then if I did a good job, I go get a Robert Tito's burrito, go home and play like League of Legends for a couple hours, and then rinse and repeat. And I was doing that like 6 or 7 days a week. And I'm so grateful I'm not in that spot now. But when I heard this, I was like, oh, damn. There's a lot of people who live like that their whole life. I didn't even think about that.
Dude, the thing I think of is, you know, we talked a little bit about it on, you know, that episode we brought up a couple episodes back, is, you know, not, you know, the people who are single parents or trying to keep a family together and are not only doing 2 jobs, they may be doing 3, 4, 5 jobs, trying to, you know, just keep themselves and their children and their families afloat, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it really puts things into perspective. And I think, you know, I was just having this conversation yesterday or a couple days ago, you know, just really recognizing how blessed we are with not only the people that we have in our lives, but, you know, the businesses we are fortunately able to run through the good and the bad, right? It makes our problems seem so much more minuscule to what a lot of the pain that Oliver's talking about, that I think a lot of Americans, not even, a lot of people, because it's obviously gone global.
Yeah, it's bigger than America.
It's bigger than that. But what a lot of people are feeling worldwide, dude, just with, he says the new world, right? And I feel like, I don't know when this shift was, but it does feel like something's, some things are different now, and I feel like the struggle is where a lot of that feeling comes from.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge disconnect between like the people who are doing really well and the people who are doing really bad.
Huge.
And I am grateful that I'm in the position I'm in. I feel like to a degree I lean more towards the people that are doing very well. And this song was interesting because we give people a hard time about, being upset with their situation and not taking accountability. But at the same time, I kind of like how he brought up, like, I wish that I could wake up and it was all away, but I can't. And it's like, to some level, that is taking responsibility for the situation. It sounds like he's probably dealt with some kinds of addictions, right?
Yeah.
And you and I talked last week. We get along very well with the people who've struggled with addiction because you and I, neither of us have really fallen into substance abuse in any way. And they come with such a different perspective on life. So it's interesting. This is an eye-opening song for me, kind of relating back to the people who don't have life anywhere near like what we have.
Well, and we were talking a little bit before the start too, and I kind of want to preface and make a note for if you are in the group of people who hasn't heard or watched this song all the way through or don't know too much about the artist, Oliver, I think he comes from, obviously, previously to being a country singer. I think he was, kind of, in the trenches, blue collar worker.
Yeah, that's what media said.
Is a very, he identifies himself as very in the middle politically, which is interesting, right? Because, and even we were talking about it before, not to drag too much politics into it in what we're talking about, but very interesting because it feels like, obviously, you've had a ton of people from the right just kind of pick up this song and eat it and kind of tout it as their own, when looking at the artist who, when Oliver has said he's kind of very in the middle politically. And I think this song is, it goes across political aisles, dude. People are hurting whether they're independent, Democrat, Republican, whatever they are in between. Everybody's hurting, dude. So I think that's what's also interesting about this, and what I think is important to keep in mind too, not to view or listen to what he's saying in a political sense, but just in a people sense, in a person sense.
In a cultural sense.
Exactly.
Like what's going on with the culture of America.
Yep.
My troubles away, it's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men, north of Richmond.
I have to also say, this dude's got such a good voice.
He does, dude.
I hate country music, but God, this guy is singing.
He's good.
Like, I think the other part to it is just like what you're saying. It's not a political stance of like Democrat versus Republican. This is like the common American trying to make their way versus what I would say are like the cultural elites, right? I don't know if that's like a political term at this point, but obviously he's referencing Washington.
Yeah, I mean, let's break it down. The name of the song is Rich Men North of Richmond. Obviously,
Washington,
alluding
D.C.
to the elites and the people running our country right north over there in Washington, D.C. Exactly. Dude, I'll at least share my perspective. Again, we're trying to look at this in a cultural and a political sense, right? But I think it's also, when I think of this, is obviously the people running our country are they're on both sides of the aisle, right? We've got Democrats, Republicans, independents, in both houses of Congress, obviously in the presidency. Everybody who has some sort of power in Washington, D.C., they fall somewhere in that political spectrum.
Yeah.
Right? And I think more so, recently, at least for me, and I'll speak on my behalf, is, I've even gotten frustrated again across both sides with everything in general, thinking about like, dude, what is going on here? We've got the people who have been in there again on both sides of the aisle for 40, 50, 60 years. Like, dude, I know we've talked about it, and again, it's bringing in a political topic, again, I think it's only political if you make it political, but either term limits or age limits or something across the whole aisle, dude, because it doesn't make sense to me. And I think that's some of the frustration that's coming out here. The people who have been there for so long know nothing else than being absorbed with the power of running the country for so long that they're forgetting about the people they're representing.
Yeah, it's hard. And I noticed that like on TikTok and everything, that it's not politically motivated. It's on both sides of the aisle that we're like, why is Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat, still in office? And at the same time, why is Mitch McConnell like in Congress as well? He literally came to that standstill.
Yeah.
And you realize that like they have no clue what a lot of people like this guy are dealing with. No. And I feel like you and I don't even fully understand it. How could a person who's been out of the real world for so long really represent it? And I think that whole part about being taxed to no end and your dollar ain't shit, like it's a good point to make that what we talked about with inflation, like it is totally different now to make ends meet than what it was 20 years ago. So imagine 50 years ago. And I think everybody understands this frustration, no matter what side of the aisle. I hear tenants talk about it. I hear landlords talk about it. I hear everybody. And it's interesting that there's this kind of a unanimous feeling that there's a constant grab for control. And just like what you're saying, it can be political or not, but there's like a unanimous feeling, I think, in the country, just as a culture, that it's disconnected from the people that are running the country. And it's seriously affecting the lifestyle and the quality of life for the people here.
Well, and I don't know if you feel this way too, but just that, the frustrations that are coming from this, it feels like to me, right? And I'm glad, people like Oliver and music like this is coming out expressing all these frustrations, because I feel like a lot of people have felt this way for a long time, or may have felt this way at some point within the past few years or even longer before, right? But the feeling that nothing's being done about it, right?
Yeah.
Or there's no hope, or there's no change that can be made to not feel this way anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think people from kind of all around the country too are feeling this, or else it wouldn't have the views that it has.
Yeah.
This song clearly connected on an emotional level with a lot of Americans. Mm-hmm. And you and I are not blue collar workers. We didn't come from poverty. We didn't deal with, any kind of substance abuse. We've had our own struggles that are very paralleled, but unique to what, a blue collar worker might have. And I think it's just interesting because I'm starting to see more collaboration within the country about stuff like that. And I hope that some more like this unifies America than pulls it apart,
I hope so too.
Because everybody's struggling together.
Everybody's struggling together, dude. And I feel like there needs, again, it's that sense of, all of these things that are happening, all of these things that are going on, all of these feelings, but the feeling that nothing's changing and nothing's happening. I hope things like this, it feels like a little bit of a momentum change to hopefully
push to do something.
A push to do something. I mean, because dude, at the end of the day, all of this stuff can come out. All of these feelings can be discussed. All of these things can go viral. But if nothing ever actually comes of it, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I mentioned his voice earlier. You know what I think it is that I like? You can kind of feel the hopelessness in his singing. Like he was singing like, oh, I wish I could wake up and it wouldn't be the same, but it is. Like there's something about that. I don't know why when he was singing it, you can almost feel like he feels trapped. And I think you and I have felt that way so many times where it's like, there's nothing we can do, this isn't going to work, X, Y, and Z. And I think everybody goes through that phase, and he did a very good job of channeling it into a medium that's allowing people to just connect over it.
Absolutely.
Men North of Richmond.
What kind of guitar is that?
I have no idea. It's pretty sweet, though.
I wish politicians would look out for minors, and not just minors on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. Well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down.
A lot in there. I'll start with the tail end just because it's what we finished on. But we've heard, the first thing I think of here is, and I've heard it talked about, and we've seen it in places everywhere, right? And maybe I don't know what it comes down to, but obviously not to exclude women from having their struggles and their things, but with men having, almost by default having to take on, the responsibility of being that strong figure, whether it's for their spouse, for their family, and just men in general having a tougher time expressing their emotions and feelings. I mean, the first thing I think of here is obviously a lot of the struggles that our veterans deal with, and the resources that come up short for them. And we hear all the time about the tragedies with veterans ending their own lives, or dealing with substance abuse, or ending up on the street with no food. And
I'll go back to that section in a second.
Yeah.
It's interesting because there is something to be said that the stats are in that there is a higher level of suicide now, but we have a better material life. It's just odd. There is a sense of hopelessness within a lot of men and women right now, but men's typical response is suicide compared to women's is maybe different.
Expressing or yeah.
And I think it's just odd. I mean, you and I have talked about my struggles with some of the stuff I've dealt with on a personal level, but I mean, we had last week or 2 weeks ago, we had Blake on, and he talked about, his stepdad-in-law took his own life, and he was by all definition successful. That's a sign of more than just a one-off death. There's a world where even when you're winning, it still doesn't feel like you're winning. And we don't know the details of that, but it does seem more prevalent. I mean, I could probably rattle off 10 people I know that committed suicide, and they're all men, and they were all what I would consider successful. But there's something to be said that, who knows, maybe this sense of helplessness or whatever is drawing everybody into this song is correctly diagnosing that there is a problem, and maybe is kind of angling our eyesight to what that might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And even rewinding it a little bit more to the beginning of the section, I know there were a couple of things to hit in here. But obviously bringing up a really tough topic with, child trafficking, sex trafficking.
And this is not political at all. Everybody was upset.
Everything under that umbrella. I mean, dude, we just had, for our 100th episode, we partnered up with Olive out of Madera, to help confront at least a little bit locally that trafficking problem. And I think that and I couldn't see how anyone could disagree. I feel like that is a universally, agreeable problem, like child trafficking, sex trafficking. That should be a non-negotiable, like, dude, we got to fucking deal with that shit.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
No.
I think you're 100% right. And again, this is why I hope this song is more unifying than polarizing.
Yeah.
Because, it's like there is something to be said that like everybody did come out and was like, dude, how did Jeffrey Epstein get out of here? Like with that, and where's, who are the co-conspirators? Like, I don't care who it was. Like, I mean, the big names on there included Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, like from both sides of the aisle, there were people going. And I think the majority of everybody else in the country was, blown away by how vile that is. And we were all surprised. But then again, nobody did anything.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. It gets swept under the rug. Everybody has those feelings, a little bit of, outrage and stuff's talked about for a little bit. But then, here we are however many years later and, nothing done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Jumping to that section about the welfare.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is where I think my personal beliefs sometimes are a little bit fuzzy because, we've had good and bad experiences with public programs, and I think there's a world where compassion is needed. But at the same time, relating it back to like COVID and the stimulus packages and seeing our friends brag to you and I specifically that they quit their jobs because they were going to make more on unemployment, as if, that was like, we should cheer them on. I remember that being hard. And at the same time, it's like, we also have people like you're talking about, the veterans who are not getting what they need. How often do we meet veterans who say, hey, I've been trying to get this from the VA for so long and I can't get it?
Yeah.
There's something to be said. It's not necessarily a political thing, but on a personal level, I've had some of the same feelings where it's like, dude, you're living in a super nice place with a Tesla and all the newest stuff, and you're bragging to me about getting government welfare in a time of crisis when there are people who may actually need that money and you totally could have worked.
That us as taxpayers are funding.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, no, I agree with you 100%. I think this is where, maybe some, personal beliefs or opinion can, kind of override here a little bit. But I'm in agreement on that one as well. And I don't think, again, there's no perfect answer. Like you said, a lot of, like the VA being obviously funded by taxpayer dollars, a lot of, resources and offices like that, obviously are either really underfunded, very poorly ran, or both.
It's mostly both. Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a right answer, but I do think, and I'll agree with you on this point because I believe it 100%. I don't think there should ever be a scenario where we should be cheering people on that they can make more by bringing in money off of everybody else's taxpayer dollars than going out and working a job.
Yeah. You think about all these guys that are working right now, hard jobs, and they're struggling to make ends meet. And then you hear people also at the same time bragging on social media about, oh, I'm pulling in this much from this and this much from that, and I'm not working and X, Y, and Z. That would infuriate me, and I think you can hear that in him, and just the idea that you and I are frustrated about it when we can afford to pay our bills. Although we may deal with money anxiety, it's not necessarily the same as if we were people working in a coal mine, legitimately barely making ends meet. That's a very different thing.
Well, and that's what I was going to say too, like taking it back to the beginning of his song, right? Overtime hours, bullshit pay. And I think of it in a blue collar sense, right? Where a lot of the jobs that our country runs on, right? Everything that falls under that blue collar umbrella. I mean, you mentioned coal mines, miners, construction. Yeah. Whatever it is, right? Where if people in those industries, if the people working in those industries weren't doing that, our country would come to a halt, right? Like,
yeah.
People, we need people in those jobs, and it doesn't make any common sense to me that you could be making more by not working than, putting, America on your back and doing some of these grueling jobs that need to be done, and we need people to do them.
Yeah, I don't blame the people necessarily who took the time off and took advantage of that loophole. At the end of the day, I think that falls back on the decision-making of the policymakers to incentivize that behavior.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to look in the mirror and say, hey, you know what? That person, is being, evil or whatever. I can disagree with it. And maybe if I did it, I would be upset with myself. But it's hard for me to also think to myself that if I was in that spot, I wouldn't consider it, and the idea that that was even a possibility is really where the problem laid. It wasn't
so too.
In the 25-year-olds who were taking advantage of that.
It was that the option was available in the first place. Exactly. Like you mentioned, the loophole was there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear what's going on in this next section.
Putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. Lord, it's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men north of Richmond.
This is very interesting that I like this song.
I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay.
Dude, I'm pumped for Oliver.
Yeah. Isn't that freaking cool, dude? That's so freaking awesome.
Yeah. I listened to some of his other songs, and they weren't nearly as catchy or quite it.
Yeah.
But, I think the reason why everybody liked this song, and I even was telling Kayla this, I've had a hard time really enjoying any of the new music recently. And I think it's because it doesn't feel genuine to me. It feels very much like a producer said, hey, do a song like this, and then they just wrote some lyrics and called it a day.
Yeah.
Whereas you can tell, the set, obviously, this is a set. I don't think he actually recorded this song here. But it feels very much genuine to this guy.
100%.
And I think, obviously, the emotions in his voice come through the song. It doesn't sound like he's trying to fake this.
No, I think, again, if he's faking it, he did a damn good job. In that last, minute 10 or whatever it is, you could see it more so, I think, than at any point in the song, right? I think that's where, like you had said, he has some other songs that maybe weren't it and didn't catch like this did. And I think for a variety of reasons, not only, the actual lyrics, but I think it's, the pain that you can tell in his voice, the emotion that you can tell. I think it's just that, perfect combination of things that just really make this, like we've been talking about, universally applicable for people to relate to in one way or the other in their own unique, things that they're dealing with or that they've dealt with in the past. Everybody can relate to some point in this song, however, with whatever they've gone through.
Yeah, I think the only last point that I was just thinking about when I heard the last section is just a part of me hopes that the next song he does is less about blaming politicians and more about unifying the people and turning to God. Like he's singing to God here.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's religious. A lot of people reference God and they do it more so like in an idea, but not in reality. But, hopefully the country can kind of come together more so in a positive way. Negative emotions obviously evoke a big turnout on social media. It's a hard reality of it. But when you have a good pulse on how the country is feeling, or at least a large chunk of the country, I hope that he can start turning this into something with positive momentum that carries into action.
Absolutely. Because again, we've said it multiple times. At the end of the day, it's about igniting that action, right? It's us, we are putting those people in office, right? We, the action and the responsibility doesn't come down to them. It comes down to us, because who's putting these people there? Who is keeping those people there, right? Everybody, can express their feelings and their opinions and their frustrations. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, the responsibility is on our shoulders. It's not on theirs. It's not on the politicians. It's not, we have a responsibility to enact that action and enact that change. If that's really what everybody's feeling, that responsibility comes down to every one of our individual shoulders.
Yeah. And I'd like to see the country move in a direction that benefits the kind of just the common man. Like
yeah.
And it seems very hypocritical to say, because that's kind of what the politicians say. But, I feel like you and I have been good examples of when people within your own community lend positive guidance, it leads to good results that trickle down. I mean, obviously, Jason's helped us and Benny has helped us. People help Benny and Jason. We've helped people below us. It becomes a exponentially growing thing. And I hope that, the country can start moving in a direction that everybody feels is beneficial. And I think we spend a lot of time arguing about the things we disagree on and not talking enough about just the things that we do agree on. And I think everybody agrees that everybody in America should have the opportunity to work and have a fulfilling life and provide for their family and experience what the founding fathers attempted to set up. And I feel like right now there's a very big discrepancy in what the founding fathers viewed the nation, where it was going, and where the common person right now thinks the nation's going.
100%.
So I hope, Oliver finds continued success. I mean, he's got a great voice. Obviously, he's got a way of enacting his emotions. I hope that he can turn it into positive momentum, for the country.
Dude, I think so too. And as we wrap this up too, the one thing I was thinking about, and I kind of want to put out there too, for any of our listeners, anybody who watches, obviously, whether you are friends of ours or not, because I know we have a lot of people, in our community, real estate wise, who listen and find value and support us in doing that way. But if you're one of the people, who are going through some of these struggles or, these feelings, me and you are always a point of contact, a point of reference, not to say we are right there with you with those, feelings and struggles that we have either gone through in the past, are currently going through. Like, everybody's dealing with something. And so I just wanted to put that out there for anybody who needs support, resources. Obviously, of course, doesn't need to be real estate related.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're here and always wanting to provide value and help out any way we can.
Yeah, I think that can't be overstated enough, that if you're dealing with the struggles of addiction, or you're dealing with depression or things like that, we may not know exactly what you're dealing with, but it's important to Cade and I to give back and to be somebody who can support you. Our goal of the podcast is to obviously help in the real estate sector, but we're human beings and we care about human beings. And so, this may be something that evokes some kind of an emotion out of you. And if you feel like you need somebody to talk to, give us a call. We're always here.
Absolutely. Well, again, this was Oliver Anthony's Rich Men North of Richmond. I think this was a cool little switch up and topic for us to talk about on the pod today. And again, we appreciate all you guys for listening, watching. If either of you or any of you need any support, have any questions, Scott and I are always here to help. And we will see you next week on the Pursuit of Property podcast.
See you later, guys.